So I'm gonna hand it over to Laura first of all, who's gonna introduce herself and just give a context of like what we're gonna cover in this session today.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone. My name's Laura Johnson, and I work with Alison Zhang in Compassionate Communities, which is for the Diocese of London. It's basically the social action, social justice team. Alison, do you want to give everyone a wave, seeing as you're on camera? There we go. She's hiding out the back today, but yeah. So Alison is going to be doing all the tech and kind of keeping an eye on the Q&A, so that if you pop a question in the chat, or raise your hand or whatever, she'll be able to keep an eye on that. My job within our team at Compassionate Communities is to support churches who are working with refugees and asylum seekers, as well as those who are experiencing or are survivors of modern slavery, or who have been experiencing homelessness, or also vulnerably housed. So I've got quite a big job. But I'm delighted to be running this with Citizens UK today to talk specifically about the government immigration white paper. This idea came out of a meeting with Nikki and Froy Legaspi, who works for North London Citizens. And we thought it'd be really good to kind of have Nikki's legal perspective on the immigration white paper, explain some of the terminology, explain kind of what are some of the possible impacts could be if certain legislation ends up coming through. So yeah, that's really the bulk of what we're going to do today, but I'm also going to just open up by setting a bit of context for churches. It's a PowerPoint that I will then send out to everyone who has signed up, and it contains useful information on different national and local charities and things like that. So hopefully it'll be a useful resource for you. We're then going to be welcoming Sage, who is going to be telling us about how churches can action for change. And then we're going to open it up and have Q&A and discussion about what you'd like to see happening in your churches and how you think you might be able to respond to some of this change and some of the rhetoric and issues coming up as a result of the white paper. So thank you very much. Bit of a whistle-stop tour. It's great to see that although we're hosting this as Diocese of London with Citizens UK, it's so fantastic to see so many people in the chat saying they're from all over the country. Some of you associated with different Citizens chapters, some of you working for different churches. So thank you so much for coming along tonight. I promise we'll keep this tight to time. We said no later than 8:15, and I believe that after an hour and 15 minutes, everyone is done with Zoom and online learning. So I think we need to keep to that time. So I can see we've still got a few more people coming in. But Nikki, would you like me to make a start with the context? Yeah?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So again, like I said, I'm going to send this PowerPoint out, but hopefully it might be really useful when you're having conversations with people, just to have kind of stats that you can share, or kind of information, especially when you're tackling perhaps some misunderstandings, some stereotypes, even hate speech, if you end up encountering some of that. So I've put in some interesting things here, including from the Refugee Convention, where, the Britain is part of the United Nations. The Refugee Convention is a hugely important part of what we sign up to as part of that. Across the world, there are over 27 million people who are refugees, and 41% of displaced people across the world are actually children. And you can see there that nearly 4,000 children applied for asylum in the UK as of the last quarter. And as some of you will probably know, especially in London, where lots of asylum seekers are, the temporary accommodation they're living in is hotels that provide meals. That means that actually some people seeking asylum are living on Home Office support equivalent to under £7 a day. So these can be really useful facts and figures to share. You'll see that quite a lot of them are from the Refugee Council. Refugee Council do some amazing infographics if you're on social media, and you can share those, and they're really useful kind of myth busters and things. So yeah, I think sometimes it can be helpful to have a few kind of facts in your pocket when you're having these conversations, as we kind of open up wider conversations about the impact of particular policies, or in this case, the immigration white paper. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of share where people seek asylum from and why. Now, I mean, when I was writing this, it's been quite a week, hasn't it, where we've learnt about different routes. So we've had the news about the Afghani data breach. and kind of safe routes today and yesterday. We've heard about Keir Starmer and Macron looking at this kind of one in, one out policy. Is that a safe route for some people and not for others? But essentially, in the UK, I think the thing that surprises people quite a lot, I find, and I don't know about you, when you're having conversations with people about refugees and asylum seekers, is that there is not really a universal safe route for people seeking asylum coming to the UK. And when they do, that we're aware of particular schemes like Homes for Ukraine. We were aware of Afghanistan and Syria. But actually, there is not, fixed, safe, and legal routes. And some of you will follow particular charities and know that this is something they really push for at the moment. So, in terms of where people are seeking asylum from, you see that Iran is right at the top. This is from the British Red Cross, which again is another really brilliant source of information if you're doing some myth busting. And particularly in churches, some of you will have congregations who are Farsi speaking, who are Iranian Christians seeking shelter from persecution. The same with Eritrea as well, who you see is kind of third down there. So it might be that some of you are already doing projects and outreach in your churches. As part of Compassionate Communities, I visit a lot of churches across the Diocese of London who are doing incredible things to support refugees and asylum seekers in their area. Everything from ESOL classes to, clothing and toiletry banks and practical support. It's amazing, but it shouldn't be that we're having to do this. It should be that people should be welcomed through safe and legal routes and given the things that they're needed to live their life. And I think that's one of the things, is that actually we find that the national picture can sometimes feel really, really overwhelming. And I know in this job, I often feel really overwhelmed by the reality of what some of the people are facing when our churches are engaging with people. We think about the issues of trafficking and modern slavery. We think about, in the kind of the past 5 years, that we've had this real whistle-stop tour of different government policies and slogans, and what does it all really mean? We have a continued ban on working if you're seeking asylum. On paid work, I should point out, is now, you can volunteer. And as we know, the asylum system, in terms of the backlog, is broken. We have people in their hundreds of thousands still waiting for an initial decision. And it can feel really overwhelming when you're trying to support people who actually are in these situations, and it can feel really desperate. And what does this actually look for the people experiencing it? And we know that our churches are full of amazing people who are part of the community, whether they worship there or not, who are refugees and are still seeking asylum or might be in the appeals process. And actually the impact on them is huge. And we see it on our wider communities as well. And I've listed just a couple of things there about media misinformation, and also far-right politics fueling the fire, which again can feel really overwhelming to tackle. So where's the good stuff? Well, this is right here tonight. You've all come along because you are interested in knowing what your churches can do to respond, to help people who are dealing with the implications of particular policies or particular papers, but also how we can best support those around us who are part of our communities and sometimes part of our worshipping communities as well. As I said, I'm going to send through this PowerPoint. So I've just included a couple of videos here, which you can watch at your own leisure. The first is from Safe Passage, which, if you don't know, is an incredible charity focused on bringing young people and children to the UK who have a right to family reunion. And they have lawyers working on the ground in France and in Greece as well. And Lord Alf Dubs is one of their patrons, I believe. And this is just a short film about Kareem being reunited with his uncle, who had been separated from the rest of his family fleeing Afghanistan. It's a really lovely short video to watch. And it is one of those kind of hopeful pictures. Safe Passage is really good at talking about how difficult these situations are, but also shining a light on where there is hope and where there are successes in bringing people to safety. The other video, for those of you who don't know what community sponsorship is, this is a really great video explaining that process and explaining a bit of a history about it as well. Lots of churches and dioceses and districts have been involved in community sponsorship. particularly back in 2015, so almost a decade ago with Syria. And this is a really good video that kind of introduces what community sponsorship is all about. So yeah, again, another useful resource, particularly if you're talking to people in church about actually we could be doing this or our communities could be doing that. Here's some hopeful images. And of course, it wouldn't be, an event with Citizens without talking about really powerful campaigns. Citizens UK do such amazing work. And we've got the bus here. So Oxford Citizens, I know, worked really hard with the local communities to campaign for free bus travel for asylum seekers, and they actually won that campaign, which is fantastic. And they're trying to do the same in London. And there's a picture there below of some of the placards that the communities were bringing along. So this one is, there's room on the bus for all of us, with the big iconic red London bus. And Bishop Anderson Jeremiah, who's one of our bishops in the Diocese of London, also spoke at this campaign. So, and he's here tonight. So thank you for coming, Bishop Anderson. I really appreciate it. And I think one of my kind of favourite success stories is probably not quite the right way of putting it, but the difference people power make when actually there was a lot going on in the courts about Rwanda and this and Freedom from Torture said, well, actually, if we persuade the airlines not to take part, then that's a win. And that's what happened. They actually got privileged style to go back on their contract and not take part in sending people to Rwanda. So that was really, really good. So there are powerful campaigns and wins out there that we can also look to in times of hope that our faith communities are involved in, churches are involved in, and there are all these incredible charities. So as I said, when I send this PowerPoint through, if you hover over a particular image, if you click on it, it will take you through to the website. So you can have a look and explore some of these different charities. But I've highlighted some here that you might have heard of, some you might not have heard of, highlighting particular issues. So hopefully that'll be helpful in terms of learning about what others are doing, and especially what other charities are doing around the immigration white paper. Some of them might have particular campaigns on, for example, you could join in with. So I'd encourage you to have a good look at some of these. And what are our churches doing? Well, I'm so pleased to say that our churches, nationally as well as locally, are doing amazing things in making sure that refugees and asylum seekers are welcomed and feel part of their communities. And if they want to, also become part of the worshipping communities. So here I've highlighted some of the social action support that is happening. Just in our diocese, what I know of, which is incredible, and really is seeing the kingdom of God at work. And yeah, it's such a joy and a privilege to visit some of these churches who are building community with people from all over the world. And then inspiration from our leaders, because actually it's really important that we're able to look to our church leaders and see what they're doing to stand up for the rights of refugees and asylum seekers and migrants generally. So sorry, Bishop Anderson, there is a picture of you in here from the Citizens UK campaign in April. We also have one of the late Pope Francis, and that was as far back as 2016 on the island of Lesbos. So we have the lead bishop for migrants and refugees from the Roman Catholic Bishops' Conference. His response to the white paper is really interesting. We have Bishop Sarah, who is the Bishop of London, who in 2023, with my predecessor, Patty Girk, wrote and kind of petitioned the Home Office to start thinking about dealing with the issues of 7-day move on, the 28-day notice period not actually happening in practice. And as we know, that has been extended to a 56-day move on period as a kind of trial. And that I believe this week we were told that they're still going to carry on with that pilot until the end of the year. And hopefully it will become policy after that. We'll have to wait and see. But we see our bishops doing amazing things. I've highlighted two here. I know we've got some people from the Diocese of Oxford in, and the late Bishop Alan and his wife Lucy hosted a Ukrainian family in their home, and they spoke very openly about that and about, you know, how it transformed their lives and the lives of the people they're bringing into their home. And of course, we have Bishop Gully Francis Dakani, who's the Bishop of Chelmsford, who not only speaks frequently in the House of Lords around refugee and asylum rights, but is herself a refugee from Iran, and is an incredibly powerful speaker. So I'm delighted that we're able to look to our bishops and our church leaders. But I am also keen that, us ordinary Christians as well in the churches, in our communities, are welcoming asylum seekers and refugees, but are also looking at how we can speak truth to power. And why do we do that? Why do we welcome as church communities? Well, we respond because we're rooted in our love for Christ, because we believe that social action is kingdom building work, because we really do believe that we should love one another and reflect the love of God. So I'm just delighted that we're here tonight to hear particularly how we can do that in response to another policy, possible policies coming in, an immigration white paper, where we know that some of the rhetoric hasn't been as welcoming and as kind as we would have liked or have hoped. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Nikki and ask her to introduce the government white paper and tell us a bit more about it. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks so much, Laura. That's great. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so that was a great context that was set. And now, as Laura said, we're going to go into some of the immigration white paper proposal. Before that, I'm just going to quickly tell you a bit about some of the work that we're doing at Citizens UK and the project that I'm working on. It's a new project and it's really quite exciting. The idea of the project is about bringing law more into the community. And this is an approach that has been called community lawyering, but it's essentially bringing law into community spaces to work alongside leaders in Citizens UK and the organisers. And it's about building legal power across our member organisations. And in order to do this, what we're doing through this project is exactly what we're doing today. So it's sharing immigration legal information, sharing updates on law and changes, but also policy and proposals, such as the white paper, and helping people to really understand the process that is impacting them, the process that they're navigating, and also their rights. So we're taking a really rights-based approach to this. And the idea is about building legal confidence in our communities. And that will then in turn help inform and influence the campaigns that people are working on in their community, but also hopefully inspire new campaigns around migration issues. So as Laura said, through this session, we want to explore how churches generally can respond to the white paper. So we're going to set the context of the white paper, what it is, what some of the proposals are. I can't cover everything in this session, so I've picked out some of the key proposals to share with you. If anyone has further questions or things that they want to know more about the white paper in particular, I'm very happy to have conversations with people outside of this space, but also there's chance at the end to have some discussions. So yeah, we're going to be looking at bits of the white paper and then thinking about how churches become active agents of change by supporting migrant communities that you work with to really use the law as a tool for justice. This is the aim. Now the white paper itself, it's a proposal, and at the moment there's a lot of change that can happen. So just to say from the start, some of the things that will be discussed could be changed. They could be changed again at a later date. There's going to be lots of room for consultation and discussion around bits of the white paper. And this is a really good and important time and opportunity for us to get together and really discuss the white paper and start to understand it, because it's also, yeah, an opportunity for us to influence and change aspects of it as it moves through the consultation period. So the white paper came out in May of this year, and it's proposing quite big changes within the immigration system. And a big part of the white paper is around this idea of reducing migration. So the government want to reduce migration. And with the media and lots of the discussion happening around the white paper and bits of the proposals that are being picked up, it's created a lot of fear in the migrant communities, the communities that I work with and that you will work with, because some of these changes are particularly scary and big and some of them are quite hostile. There are also bits that I will discuss that are more welcomed, that are also important to recognize and acknowledge, and we really should welcome them. And it is an opportunity to think, well, this is a positive thing. How can we use that to kind of like our advantage for the communities that we work with? So there are positives, but there are also quite a lot of unfortunately more policies that are not so positive, and I will go through those with you. So at this stage, it's not law or policy, it is just a proposal. And also with that means that quite a lot of it is still quite vague and unclear. And as time goes on, we know that through the consultation period and when policy is produced, things will become clearer. But right now, some of the things that I talk about, I might be quite vague on, and it's just because the white paper itself, it is still quite vague and unclear. So what is the white paper? What is it and what isn't it? So it's not a legal document at this point. It's not legislation, and nothing has passed as law, and nothing has yet become part of the immigration rules in the UK. It sets out the direction of travel for the government and the future changes that they want to make as a government. So why does it matter? It's really important because, as I said, it signals this journey, the priorities that the government have and the direction that they want to go. So it's a really important time for us to engage on these issues, understand them, and act, and hopefully put some pressure on the government. It's a real opportunity for us to think together collectively about how we influence this. What could happen next? As I said, there's likely to be a consultation period on many of the proposed changes. We don't know yet when that consultation period will be, and we're waiting to hear about that at the moment. Some of the changes that have been proposed can actually be made directly by amending the immigration rules. So what that basically means is that not all of the proposals have to go through Parliament and not all of them will be voted by Parliament, so they don't require new legislation or new law. Some of them can just be amended directly in the immigration rules, and that is because in our legislation there is the power to do that. That won't apply to all of the proposals, but to some of them that is likely to be the case. But again, there's been a real emphasis that there will be this consultation time, there will be time for change. And so even though that could happen, we have this time to discuss and influence. Now, the first part of the proposal that I wanted to look at was around settlement. Now, settlement is also referred to as indefinite leave to remain, and it's essentially the point of the process for somebody where they can apply to settle in this country. So they may have had periods of leave to remain and unsettled status, precarious status, and they're at a point in which they can apply to settle here, to live here permanently, for this to be their home, and that's an application process. And that the time in which somebody can apply to settle can vary from person to person, different routes and applications that they're on, different circumstances. Some people are on a 5-year route, so they will wait 5 years before they can apply to settle. Some people are on a 10-year route, a longer route to settlement. Now, the white paper is proposing that they want to put most people onto the 10-year route to settlement. So people that are currently on a 5-year route, they want to increase that, double that to 10-year. We don't know whether this will apply to everyone. We know there are a few groups that are exempt, including partners of British citizens and people who are here under the EU settlement scheme. They will continue to qualify for settlement after 5 years, but it's not yet confirmed if any other groups will be exempt. And again, we know that there's plans for this to go through a consultation period later this year. But we do know that this could impact a lot more people, and a lot more people could be placed on a 10-year route to settlement, which is obviously a much longer route to settlement, a longer period of being in limbo with unsettled, insecure status. So it will impact a lot of the communities that we work with. Now, it's also not clear in the proposal whether this change will apply to people already in the immigration system, so the people that we're already working with going through the system, or whether it will just be for those who are arriving, and from that point they will be placed on a 10-year. That still remains unclear and yet to be seen, but it could, if it is what they call retrospective, so it is applying to people who are already in the immigration system, it could impact a lot of people. The other aspect of settlement that I wanted to mention, which links into this 5-10 year changes that they're proposing, is what they're referring to as new earned settlement. And this idea of earned settlement is what the government is saying, a possibility to reduce the 10 years. So people that are placed on this 10-year route will have an opportunity to reduce it based on the contributions that they make to the UK economy and society. So again, clarity around this is quite unclear on what that means. We have heard that contributions and the idea of contributions will hopefully be considered quite widely and diversely, so encompassing different types of contributions that someone makes to society, such as, learning English, going to ESOL, volunteering. But there's no guidance yet on what the meaning of contribution is and how that will be interpreted. And it could create a sense of a two-tier system that devalues certain people in the community if they are not seen as contributing, and then create this unfair access and this unfair route to settlement and citizenship, where some people can qualify for settlement earlier than others. So it kind of creates a bit of a two-tier system. But on the other hand, it could be an opportunity to really shape what contributions means. What does contribution mean to us, to the communities that we work with? What does that look like? And so it could definitely be used as an opportunity to really draw on the ideas of contribution in a positive and meaningful way. So yeah, just to emphasize again that this settlement proposal, so the 10-year route and the contributions to UK society, will be discussed later this year, and the government do plan to run consultations on them. So there will be plenty of opportunity for people to comment and consider the detail. But also the government have emphasized that they want the settlement rules to be amended as swiftly as possible and to apply widely, but yeah, with consultation as part of that process. The other part of the proposal I wanted to mention was around citizenship, which relates and is very similar to the settlement, the idea of settlement in the paper. The paper says that becoming British is a privilege, it's not a right, and that the government want people to respect the rules around citizenship and the rules, the UK immigration rules, and make their contribution to the UK. So very vaguely, the proposal says that they want to increase the period of time before a person can apply for citizenship. And again, for people to be able to qualify sooner based on the contributions they make. So quite vague and unclear, but very similar to the idea of earned settlement. Another aspect of the proposal I wanted to highlight was around English and English language. Again, there's not much detail in the proposal, but the white paper does say that it wants to increase, so make the requirements harder, but for people who have to meet English language requirements as part of their settlement application process, but also across other immigration routes. So they essentially want to make this process stricter and make it and increase those requirements so people have to meet a higher level of English in order to meet the requirements under different immigration routes. The government say that they want people to have better knowledge of English, which they plan to assess over time. How that will look in practice, I'm not sure, but there is this real emphasis on people having better knowledge of English and that being part of the process, their immigration application process. The government also planned to conduct a refresh of the Life in the UK test. The Life in the UK test is the test that people take when they are applying to naturalise as a British citizen. So after they've settled and they want to become British, the Life in the UK test they have to pass before they can they can submit that application. And the test is known to be particularly challenging, not relevant to kind of UK society, and people spend a lot of time studying and preparing for the test, and it takes a lot of time and extra work. So the idea of a refresh is really welcomed and is actually, again, another opportunity to think about, well, what does that refresh look like and what should the Life in the UK test look like? When I've had conversations with other communities and ran a similar session, there's been some really interesting responses to that, where people have said things about how with ESOL learning and English learning, you could bring in the Life in the UK into that learning. So by the time people are ready to sit their test, they've actually learned it through there, and it's relevant to their learning of ESOL, and it's relevant to life in the UK. So again, a potential opportunity there. Now, the other proposal I wanted to highlight was around young people, children and young people. Again, a more positive, welcomed proposal. The government have committed to help children who have turned 18, so they're adults, who have lived in the UK a long time. They're committed to help them regularize their status and settle in the UK. So that's quite a welcomed commitment there to children and young people. And they also want to create clearer pathways to settlement for children who are in the care system and young adult care leavers. So children that were in the care system has then become an adult and are still being supported by the local authority. They want to create a clearer pathway to settlement for those children. They also want to reduce the financial barriers for young adults who are applying for British citizenship, who have grown up in the UK. Now, currently, there are really high costs for citizenship applications for both children, young adults, and adults generally. And there is a commitment here from the government to look at reducing the financial barriers there for young adults, which is a welcomed commitment. Again, it's all quite vague at this point, and we would expect more guidance on all of this and how this will work in practice. But it is an opportunity for communities to be thinking about what that looks like, and that's exactly what we're doing in Citizens UK with our campaigning, which I'm going to mention shortly, but around the pathways to citizenship, the campaigning work that's going on at Citizens, where there is a big focus on children in care and also child citizenship fees, so reducing those fees for all children. But it's really positive to know that the government have a commitment to this too. And it's been an opportunity for us at Citizens and the organisers and leaders to really think about this in more in depth and like what are our asks around this? What do we want the government to be committing to further than this? Now, just quickly going to mention about migrant workers and social people that have come as care workers on the social care visa route. The white paper says that the government want to close the social care visa route to new overseas applicants. This is for new applicants, new people that are applying to come to the UK. Now, there is a plan for this to close on the 22nd of July. So this is actually being implemented very soon. It won't impact people that are already here. This is for new applicants, and then they will phase out the route, I think, up until 2028. But this is already an example of a proposal that is being implemented quite quickly. So that route will be closed from the 22nd of July. The government also want to tighten visa rules for skilled migrant workers, so other migrant workers coming to the UK across the board, the requirements, they want to tighten those rules, make it harder for people to meet those requirements and come to the UK. They also want to allow a limited pool of recognised refugees, so refugees that have been recognised by the UNHCR in different countries globally, to apply for employment through existing skilled worker visas. So essentially in the country that they're in, there could be an opportunity for refugees to come through and be sponsored through skilled worker routes. Again, somewhat positive, but in practice, how that will work could be challenging, and how many people this will impact and how many people will benefit from this might be quite small, but it's a bit more of a positive direction. Now, asylum reforms, the reforms around asylum are there's not many within the white paper. It's quite vague on this. There is another bill that is going through Parliament at the moment, which is specifically around asylum. But in the white paper, it is highlighted, and there is an emphasis around reducing the small boats, which is an ongoing rhetoric of the previous government and this government. So reducing the small boats, also ending asylum hotels, increasing enforcement, so that and removals. So that would be someone, for example, who had been refused asylum, had come to the end of the asylum process, had been through the appeals process. They want to create a quicker removal and enforcement process for people that have been, refused asylum. And also, quite worryingly, there's still this emphasis around age assessments. That's been an ongoing concern of the previous government and now this government. Age assessments, there was a big focus around scientific age assessments, and now the government is saying they also would want to propose new technologies to assess age. That's assessing the age of young people, of unaccompanied children that arrive in the UK, who the local authority and the government don't believe to be a minor, or they're unsure of their age. They want to introduce new technologies to assess age, which is quite very concerning. So when will these changes come in? Now, as I said again, I've not covered everything in this session. I've covered some of the more some of the key proposals, but there are other aspects of the white paper that you may want to look through. We can send in the chat the full paper for you to have a look at. But the actual timeline and the overall timeline for these proposals is, there isn't a timeline. Things will come in at different points, but the Home Office have, as I just mentioned, they've begun to implement some of them, including an end to this overseas recruitment of care workers. Consultations will happen throughout the course of the rest of this year, particularly around the 10-year settlement route that we talked about and this idea of contributions, which again means that there will not be changes straight away, and there's a lot of time for influence during this period. And it's great that we're having these discussions now. So how are we at Citizens responding to the white paper? And then we're going to think about how you can respond by giving an example of how this has worked in practice. And Sage, who I think is on the call now, will come in with a brilliant example of some of the work that she has been doing as an organizer in her region. So how are we generally responding at Citizens? We have an ongoing campaign around pathways to citizenship, which is an ask for a fairer, more timely, and more affordable pathway for all people who are on the route to settlement and citizenship. And since the white paper has come out, we've been holding space, briefings like this, for ongoing discussions around the white paper, what it looks like, how that impacts our campaigns, and how communities can respond to that together. And the more we can share the information in the white paper, what these proposals say, the more power that kind of gives us to inform the campaigns that we work on at Citizens and the direction in which the community and the leaders want to go in. So as I mentioned before, this Pathways to Citizenship, there is a focus around children in care, citizenship fees, also creating fairer treatment for migrant care workers, and stronger English language provision. There's many, many more asks, but these are some of our core focuses at the moment because they're coming out of the white paper and because it's a really good opportunity for us to discuss this more and come up with our asks around these issues. So we are doing this by working across our member organizations across the country. In our migration and refugee organizing team, we have amazing organizers who are working with schools, universities, faith groups, frontline charities, legal clinics to build stronger alliances, build stronger legal understanding, and build stronger power so we can really make change and ask for change and really relate it to the white paper and the current context that we're in. So how can churches respond? Sage is our refugee and migrant organizer who's working in East and West Midlands. And she is going to share with you an example of how church organizing and pressure can influence change and how understanding of the law and policy within church communities can really bring that change. Sage, I can't see you, but are you
Yeah,
on the
can you see
call?
me?
I can now.
Yeah, okay, great. You had me worried there. Good evening and evening everyone. My name is Sage. Thank you, Nikki. I'm the Migrants and Refugee Organiser from the Midlands with Citizens UK. Really glad to be with you all here today and just to get into a chance to share a bit about what's been happening through church-based community organising in Nottingham and how churches are showing that they are not just pastoral spaces, but public institutions capable of shaping law and policy, like Nikki um, nicely explained in today's session. So at the heart of organising is listening, and I'd like to use this opportunity and this example to begin with that. Over the past year, Pilgrim Church, which is a church in Nottingham, but is also a member of our Nottingham Citizens Alliance, has been listening closely to their community as well as congregation. So a lot of that listening has been around the lived experience some of these community leaders and members of the church have had with the immigration system, but as well as other pressures such as housing pressures, the rising cost of living, for example, as well as the concern of the recent white paper. So through that listening, they've built teams, developed leaders, and began shaping local campaigns. The church even began running Windrush compensation scheme support groups, entirely unpaid, and they didn't even have the resources for it, but it was led by volunteers from the congregation. So not only, again, did they offer that pastoral support, but the practical guidance on that compensation scheme was also a key takeaway in terms of how they're organizing through their church. And that experience, I think, for me, not only motivates me, but it gave the church credibility, visibility, as well as the power to like convene with their community leaders. But on top of that, they even then organise through that listening and the teams that they've built and brought on the Nottingham Windrush Forum, deepening their public role into holding government systems to account. And also within the Nottingham Citizens Alliance have also worked with schools such as the Nottingham Girls Academy, using our Pathway to Citizenship campaign to explore the immigration policies of today that also echo past injustices, similar to the Windrush scandal. So those cross-generational alliances led to visible public action. They went on to organize for the Windrush Day on the 22nd of June, a huge celebration where they brought civil society and a lot of other organizations in Nottingham, as well as the Mayor of Nottingham, Lord Mayor Claire Ward, as well as representatives of the East Midlands Combined Authority. So listening even took them deep into the wider infrastructure of their city and their region. And it wasn't just awareness raising. And I think it's a true testament and what looks like when churches act as public actors, working for justice and shaping the general narrative around migration. Now, the exciting part about all of this is one of their key leaders, Reverend Clive Foster, has also been actively on the leadership team for Nottingham Citizens, but through the leadership in his church, he's now been appointed the UK's new Windrush Commissioner, which is a statutory position created via the Home Office. So again, not only is that appointment symbolic, but it shows that if churches can build that relational power and a power that influences who makes decisions, I feel like through that organising and the work that the campaign is doing with the church, the work has reached a national stage. And a bit live and direct today in London at Hackney Town Hall. It was the launch of the office for the Windrush Commissioner, Clive. And what really stood out and a powerful moment was that there was a in conversation segment where the Home Office Minister, Seema Malhotra, was there alongside Clive, who's a new Windrush Commissioner, but also a minister as well as a reverend at Pilgrim Church. And it was just so beautiful to see young people and community leaders from across the UK understanding that not only was the room full of organised power, but it was the interfaith, the built-in local churches, the schools, and it just gave a chance for real everyday people from, members of churches to be there asking about questions about where migration policy is going. So when churches organize and when they listen and they develop leaders and act collectively, they don't only serve the community, they shift public debate and shape national roles. And I think organizing in churches is a tool for justice, and the legal power doesn't just live in courts or parliament. It lives in our church halls like the Pilgrim Church and the relationships that we build over time. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nikki.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Sage. Okay, so I'm now gonna open, it's a good opportunity after Sage's example to open the floor, open the discussion. Any questions about Sage's example and but also any questions about the white paper that you have, any questions that are coming up for you, but also it'd be good to have a bit of a discussion about how you think you can respond, or we can respond, or any ideas that are coming up for you and arising at this point. I kind of want to open the floor. We can do it as please respond in the chat, or it can be that you raise your hand, whatever works.
I wonder if we could also invite Bishop Anderson to share about the work he's been doing with citizens. Bishop Anderson, if you're still here, which I think you are, and I just looked at the list, would you be able to tell us a bit about the work you've been doing with citizens and why this work is important to you and how you see churches in our diocese and responding?
Sure. Yeah. I'm still here.
Thank you.
I'm just I'm sitting by the Thames River because I was kicked out of the office because they're closing at 7 o'clock. Anyway, so this is, I think, thank you, Nikki and Laura and Sage, for giving such a powerful account of what we can do as civic members, but also belonging to faith communities. Why I am quite passionate about this issue is about what this white paper does is it consolidates a political narrative into policy making. It almost essentializes this vulnerable group of people who are categorized as immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, and makes them a political target, a political agenda, rather than addressing the need and the commitments of a society such as ours. And this is very, very important because when Nikki was talking about, I did my life in the UK test about 8 years ago. And it's the most absurd test that anybody can go through. What is British life? Having tea and cupcakes, or cupcakes and scone and cream. That is the test that you need to pass in order to become a British citizen. What we need to do, I think this is very, very important. What I've been trying to do within my Episcopal area and more broadly in the diocese is to encourage our churches to really make use of the social and civic privileged place that we have. And it is very, very important that whether we like it or not, we are present in the most important spaces geographically and culturally. And I think we have a responsibility to make use of that privilege in order to hold the local government, the civic government, the councillors and the mayors, and our members of parliament to actually be attentive to the needs of the community. And what is happening is very often churches and faith communities, this is not just Church of England, but I'm also a trustee of Churches Together in England, where we have more than 56 members, member churches. And our churches are directly dealing with these kind of issues. And it's very important how we galvanize and mobilize the goodwill that we have in our communities towards the most vulnerable, and not allow these divisive political rhetorics to become politically enshrined in our governments and in our structures. As Nikki very beautifully pointed out, while this white paper was created, while this is being debated, there are certain structural aspects that are being put into place and implemented within our government. So we need to be aware of that. Therefore, education, creating awareness and participation in our civic responsibility is very critical. And as a church, I think we have a significant role to play. And I think as a bishop, with a good place within that table, I've been exercising my own role, my responsibility to reflect why, as a church, as a country, with a past which has been built around immigrants and refugees, can really need to reinvent its moral standing in the global stage and not pander to these political narratives, and which requires moral integrity and moral commitment. And Citizens UK, as a very good civic organization, has demonstrated that it is possible for churches to work together along with our civic partners to contribute something good, which contributes to the commonwealth in all its good sense. We need to really believe in that commonwealth, not only when it suits us, but actually when it matters. Thank you so much for all that you're all doing, and it's great to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here, even outside. Okay, I think Julia, you have your hand up if you'd like to come in.
Hi. So thank you so much, Nikki, for that really helpful kind of overview. One of the big things, so very, very briefly about my background, I was a BBC journalist for many, many years, mainly based on the World Service. So I covered sort of, coups, wars, etc. And then for the last 10, 11 years, 12 years, I've specifically focused reporting on the global church under pressure around the world, so persecuted Christians. And one of the issues that I've became very aware of is that in many countries, Christians felt that they were not well treated by the UN systems. So, for instance, in Syria and Iraq, they often didn't go through the sort of UN processes because they felt that many of the officials didn't actually treat them well. And so it concerns me that in this white paper, they're talking about, people who get access through UN approved routes. And I just wondered if there's anything that, given that you're talking about sort of perhaps organising some responses to this, whether there is something that we could do to kind of raise that, because I just think it's quite a it's quite a technical sort of idea, but there are quite good research, data and that kind of thing, which we might be able to pull together. I don't know. It's just a thought. I just wondered if that's something that other people are aware of or have experienced with Christians that they've encountered in their own churches who are applying for asylum.
It's a really good point. Thank you, Julia. And also there's the other issue with that in terms of where the UNHCR are based globally. They're not based in every country, and not everyone has the same access to that. So there's quite a few different issues there, but thank you for raising that. I think that's a really good point and something that we could discuss more.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm Evan, I know you've got your hand up. I'm just going to go to the chat because there was a comment from Catherine. Well, a question. Is there or could there be a support pack created for churches which could help us take action? I think that's a brilliant idea. I don't know if that exists. Laura, do you?
I mean, as far as I'm aware, I can only speak for like what we do in our diocese. Other people in different dioceses or districts, for example, doing churches might have a different answer. But currently, no, we do not have a support pack around creating action for churches. And Mother Catherine, do you mean particularly around political action around the immigration white paper? Or perhaps more generally? I know more generally, the Methodist churches have a constituency network they've just launched, which is all about encouraging churches, not just around asylum, migration and immigration, but to connect and campaign with their local MPs and to bring about political change. So that could be something worth exploring. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I'll have to get Alison to okay, but it's something perhaps we could work on together at Citizens and the diocese and see if we can create a support pack, which would be really, really helpful, I think.
Yeah, brilliant idea. And there's also the option in relation to the white paper that we could do a one-pager or two-pager that could go in a support pack, but it could also just be used separately as a bit more of a fact sheet.
Yeah, and Julia has just put in the chat that she says that welcome churches are possibly creating a support pack as well. And this is the thing, because it's so kind of fresh still and, like Nikki was saying, quite vague and unclear. I think as things become clearer and consultations start, we'll probably see a lot more charities bringing out kind of particular campaigns around particular issues or particular things they want to champion or change within the white paper. So it's worth keeping an eye out. But I wouldn't be surprised if Welcome Churches did do one. They're really good at that sort of thing. So worth keeping an eye out on them as well. Thanks, Julia.
Great. Okay. Evan, coming to you.
Thank you. Like Bishop Anderson, it's within the past few years that I took my life in the UK test, having lived here on various forms of visa for a decade. And I will admit to having mixed feelings about this immigration white paper. I suspect that those mixed feelings are shared by a wide variety of my congregation. There will be people who say all are welcome unconditionally. There will be people who want conditions to be tougher, who are not necessarily going to run out and vote reform at the next election. So I suppose what I'm interested in is how we have an intelligent, engaged conversation about immigration, asylum, refugees, etc., but without assuming a predetermined conclusion. Because I think as leaders, yes, it's our responsibility to sort of shape Christian thinking, but I don't want people to walk into a room thinking, I know how this is going to end. and my view is not going to be respected. I recognize that's a quite broad question to ask, but given that there are resources available that are supportive, generally speaking, of being a more welcoming, open society, are there things available that ask good questions but don't fall into the kind of far right trap? Because it's worth, you know, as I say, having a real conversation rather than a contrived one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evan. Jess.
Yeah, I was going to come in on that quickly. Is that all right, Nikki?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you raise, Evan, about like meeting communities where they're at on this issue. And one of the things that we did in the West Midlands, because a lot of what we were hearing in church and other communities was some tension between migrant communities who moved here some time ago and what they saw or understood about migrant communities moving here now. And and that was also something that we heard from MPs was coming up in their kind of inbox as well. And so working with the University of Birmingham, we came up with a relational way of doing myth busting, recognizing that traditional myth busting that says, no, you're wrong, these are the facts, this is how it really is, doesn't work. There's a lot of research on that. So we worked with the University of Birmingham and churches like St Chad's and St Mark's in Wolverhampton to actually explore how do you use community organising tools like relational listening to develop a new way of myth busting, which doesn't sort of, you know, kind of chastise people for views that they have or try and persuade people, but actually it just meets communities where they're at and facilitates conversations which lead to a broader understanding of the realities of people's different experiences. There is a blog about myth busting on our website, and we're looking at how can we expand it at the moment because it's been a really successful local campaign that we've run. I'll post a link in the chat.
Thanks so much, Jess. Jess works at Citizens UK.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that.
Great, thank you. Is there any other thoughts, questions that people have? Sorry if I've missed anything in the chat.
Yeah, I can see from the chat that Sage is saying to Evan that what's worked really well for her in Nottingham is starting with stories, not opinions. And I think, again, that's a really good way of doing some kind of non-traditional myth busting and kind of relationship building and community building. Is stories are so powerful, aren't they? Sage, is there any particular story you want to share that sticks out, a particular favourite?
I mean, apart from it's just generally around the pressures that people are facing from the cost of living to living in a limbo in terms of insecure status to housing to even myself, like going through the lived experience in the system. And sometimes it's so empowering to be able to share my own story. So there's that leveling of like relational power that we can start building. So, I mean, it varies, and through listening, a lot of that comes out, but it's so empowering to share stories because it just allows people to connect and have a different way of working together moving forward. Like you said, non-traditional, Laura.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sage. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. We've got 2 minutes left. I just wanted to share my final slide. Just some examples that we think, you know, you could start to kind of think about with your churches, some things that some action that you can take, some things that you can do. We've just been having some conversations about this anyway, and Sage talked a lot about listening and the importance of listening within her work as an organizer and how impactful that is. So one thing that could be great is for churches to hold listening spaces. I'm sure many of your churches already do, but maybe hold a space, and that space could also be around the white paper. So once we put together this 1-page, 2-pager, it could be an opportunity for you to share that information with people in the church and hold a space for listening around that. Sharing your learning of the white paper that's come out of this session, joining up with local other churches, the migrant broader like migration alliances in your local area, and also reaching out to Citizens UK, so to us, about working in partnership with us, and in membership with us, if that's something as a church you would like to do or like more information on. We also have national strategy group meetings that we hold for members across the country. So another thing that you can get involved in is joining one of those national strategy group meetings. So there's definitely things and action that like you can take now, and we really, really would love to carry on the conversation with you all. I have shared my email at the end. I'll also, Sage, you could share your email in the chat. That would be great. If you have any questions that come from this, or you are wondering what you can do next and want some input from us, then we're really happy for you to reach out and for us to stay connected. There's my email at the end. As I said, this is the start of a new project. I'm 2 months into the role, so we're really piloting these sessions and seeing how well this legal education information sessions, they work in this way, and we're doing it in other ways too, where we're really on the ground with communities and running sessions with individuals and groups in the community. So we're trying it in different ways. So we really welcome your feedback. If you have a couple of minutes, it's just a quick feedback form you can scan using your phone. You scan the QR code and it should take you to a short feedback form, but really, really great if you have the time to do that. It will help us with with learning from this session and how we run sessions in the future with yourselves and with other people too.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you everyone for coming. It's been really informative, and I've definitely learned loads and come away with some ideas about how we can get our churches mobilised and engaged. And yeah, thank you all for your time this evening. I know there's always lots of pressure on different times and different things. So thank you for coming. And yeah, we'll send around a follow-up email with some slides. And we've done a little bit of editing and tweaking to make sure it's lovely and I'm not pulling too many silly faces. So thank you so much. And yeah, thank you once again, Nikki. It's been really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. Take care and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.